Good afternoon. In this segment of Native American lesson planning, we will discuss American Indian leadership. By the end of this presentation, we will be able to discuss how federal policies and practices have led to the loss of tribal sovereignty. We will also be able to discuss how treaties between the United States government and American Indians have been unhonored. Before we dig too deep, we need to determine what tribal sovereignty is. Tribal sovereignty is the right of American Indians to determine their future as well as operate as self-governing nations. In 1988, the U.S. Congress passed the U.S. Concurrent Resolution of 331, which determined inherent powers given to all tribal nations. These included the following. They were helped determine that members of the Native American tribe could determine their own form of government. They are able to create conditions for their own members. Native Americans are able to administer justice and enforce laws as they see fit. Native American tribes are able to regulate their own property tax, as well as regulate their own domestic relationships. The U.S. government agreed to the treaties with the Native Americans in order to gain more land. Native American Indians gave up large amounts of land in order to retain small amounts of land with the right to govern their own. In all these treaties, the government agreed to provide the tribes with education, assistance with health issues, as well as technical issues. From the early days, these treaties were not upheld. From the beginning, the federal government did not honor the treaties, and Congress used constitutional powers as justification in order to regulate trade within Indian nations. This led to the erosion of all tribal political rights, as well as the loss of land. The difference between these later federal policies that ended up taking land away from Native Americans was that the later federal policies passed arbitrary laws. There was no real reason. They did not use their congressional power. They used it in an attempt to control all aspects of American Indian life. Time after time, U.S. courts continually backed the powers of Congress and gave them the rights to do these without real reasons, real findings in order to do this. Through all of this, the American Indians lost enormous amounts of land. In 1970, the Indian Trade and Intercourse Act was passed. This gave the U.S. government control of Indian land. This encouraged border intrusions over and over again, resulting in less and less land for the Native Americans. Congress did not pay money for this land. In the Dawes Act of 1887, the President of the United States could survey Native American land and divide it amongst specific individuals. For Native Americans who agreed to this, would be given American citizenship. Keep in mind, again, Congress did not pay for this land. They did not give the Native Americans any sort of monetary compensation in order for this land. They walked right on in, took what they perceived as theirs, and divided it up however they saw as fit. There were three ways that the legislation took away sovereign powers. The first way was the political question doctrine. These are questions decided by the legislative or executive branch. They did not go through the courts. They went right up to the top, and the top decided without any further backing. The second was the guardian-ward relationship. In this way of taking away sovereign powers, trust allowed Congress the extraordinary power to take action to protect Indian nations. This was to say that if Congress deemed that something was unsafe or unfit, they would walk right in and they would fix it in whatever way they deemed fit. The third way was the plenary power of Congress. Plenary means full and complete. So essentially this is saying that the power had Congress in Indian affairs that is full and complete. They have the last say, they have the final say for everything. As a result of these three situations, Indian nations no longer were able to govern themselves. One example of a land reduction cost, which was caused by the United States federal government, was the situation up in Red Lake. The Red Lake tribe had land from northwestern Minnesota into North Dakota to the west and up into Canada. In 1963, the Old Crossing Treaty of 1863 recognized Red Lake as a separate and distinct nation. They were able to govern themselves, all the things that the treaties could do, such as determining their own form of government, creating conditions for their members, regulating domestic relationships, administering justice and enforcing laws. In 1863, they were all able to do this. However, at this time, the tribe that was living in Red Lake traded 11 million acres of their own land, which was really, really good farming land, for monetary compensation and a stipulation that read, the President of the United States direct a certain sum of money to be applied to agriculture education and to other such benefits purposes calculated to promote the prosperity and happiness of the Red Lake Indian. Again, this is saying that the President went in, said everything they needed to say, got everything it needed to say in order to divide up the land how they wanted to. Now, not only in 1863 did the Red Lake tribe give up 11 million acres, but by 1904, the Red Lake tribe had also seceded more than 2 million more acres, so a total of 13 million acres was taken away from the Native Americans and given to the federal government, so the Native Americans could not govern themselves. Now, for our activity, we are going to create a story about what it would be like to be a Native American tribal member during a situation when this is occurring. So you must create your own story for Native Americans that includes an event of some kind of interference from the U.S. government, whether they're taking away land, whether they're shrinking land, whether they're taking you and moving you. You have to create your own story and think about what happens, how you would feel during this, and how you would feel after all this is over. Once you're complete with your story, you are going to compare with your neighbor, and you are going to determine what else. You're going to compare and contrast what you thought, what they thought. How would you feel as a Native American if all your land was taken away, your right to govern yourself was taken away? How would you feel? What would you do? Maybe it's feelings towards the federal government or feelings towards even members of your own tribe who might be more in alignment with the federal government, whatever you choose. But it needs to be a story that has a situation that is real, that happened, and then how would you go from there?